Good morning. Here are some things you should know this week. Today is the last day to sign up for our UCOV Halloween party, which will be held this Friday, October 31st, from 4 to 7 right here in the sanctuary. The sign-up sheet is on the sign-up table on the lanai. Costumes are encouraged but not required. Pizza will be served. Please bring an appetizer or dessert and BYOB. A good time is guaranteed, and if you have any questions, please see Eileen. Eileen, give a wave. She's got her Halloween sweater on. The green team is looking for some able-bodied helpers on Wednesday at 9 a.m. to cut back and groom the landscaping around the sanctuary. Please see Donna J. or Kim after the service. There's Donna J. right there. There are 3 upcoming social justice events. There will be another Signs of Fascism protest this Tuesday, October 28th, from 9 to 11 at the Sarasota Social Security Office. Participants are needed. On Sunday, November 2nd at 11:30, the Immigrant Justice Coalition will present an educational forum on the status of our immigrant community. If you have any questions about these social justice events, please see Anna at the sign-up table on the lanai after service. Now, if you're not sure who some of these people are that I've asked you to see, you can also see me, and I'll bring you over and introduce you. Please check the back of your bulletin, as always, to see what's happening on this campus this week. And please take a moment to silence all your electronic devices as our service begins. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Venice that we call UCOV. At UCOV, we strive to center love and wisdom and to journey together in ways that affirm and support one another. No matter who you are welcome to join in this community of support and caring. We are so pleased that you have chosen to spend this time with us, and we hope you'll join us for conversation and refreshments on the lanai just after the service. The words for our chalice lighting come from A Fire in the Universe by Sean Trapp. Our chalice reminds us that the fire within ourselves is the same fire that illuminates the universe. It is our reminder that all is connected, even though the space of the void is vast, and our experience here is but a blip in the cosmic timeline. This flame is our promise that in our smallness and our short time on this earth, that we live intently and deeply, with love for one another, with honesty and integrity, to be guided by rational thought and critical thinking, and with a sense of shared responsibility. For as the late astronomer Carl Sagan reminded us, this pale blue dot is the only home we've ever known. We're so happy to welcome Julia back this week as our guest pianist, and she will now play the prelude. Thank you, Julia. Our guest speaker today is Bill Payton. Bill grew up in Akron, Ohio, and attended the University of Akron, which is also the alma mater of Dick Smith, and he earned a degree in banking and finance. He spent 40 years in the insurance industry, working in 7 different cities and states. He retired from the University of Missouri in January of 2007, where he had served as the Director of Risk and Insurance Management. While there, he was honored as Distinguished Risk Manager of the Year by the University Risk Management and Insurance Association. While attending a high school reunion in Akron, he became reacquainted with a high school classmate, Mary Fran Raynault. Mary Fran was raised Universalist and was president of her UU congregation in Paramus, New Jersey. Bill and Mary Fran are now life companions and moved to Sarasota in 2010. He became both a UU and a member of the Sarasota UU in January of 2011. Bill has been active on several committees and has served a total of 5 years as president of the Board of Trustees. Bill has 3 children, 7 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren. He plays tennis, golf, and bridge, and loves attending Sunday services with the Unitarian Universalists of Sarasota. Please join me in welcoming Bill Payton.
If you haven't heard this morning, there's good news. They caught the thieves from the Louvre Museum, and they've recovered the jewelry, and they're going to put it in a safe. What a great idea. I want to thank you for having me. I was here last year and spoke, and it's reassuring to have been invited back. I appreciate that, to hear the ramblings of an old man. And it's a pleasure to say greetings on behalf of the UUs of Sarasota. And we are thriving in the north and just have a lot going on like you guys do. So you have probably heard what they say about Unitarians. We meet up at St. Peter's Gate all dressed up with nowhere to go. And so we had better pray. Picture 1, please. Okay. Okay. Now the next one. Thank you. The next picture, please. Can you all read that?
They would like you to read it.
All right. It said, let us pray. If any of you are Unitarians, do whatever it is you do. So in Sarasota, we do not pray as such, but we have been grieving since last November. I assume that we are not alone. And there are various models and stages of grief. And the stages of grief were originally identified by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and included denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that first stage, as I said, is denial, and it involves a refusal to accept the reality of the loss. It serves as a defense mechanism to help individuals cope. People may feel numb or believe that the loss is not happening. Well, we were in denial, but on January 20th this year, it became a day of reality, and we've been grieving since then. The next phase is anger. As denial fades, individuals may experience anger. This anger can be directed towards themselves and others. In the event of the loss of a loved one, it can even be directed at the deceased. This stems from feelings of helplessness and frustration. And a lot of us are stuck with that feeling of helplessness and frustration. Bargaining, that's the next stage. Individuals may attempt to negotiate or bargain for a way to reverse the loss. This could involve making promises to a higher power And as we discussed, this has not worked well for a lot of UUs. Depression. This stage is characterized by deep feelings of sadness and despair as the individual begins to process the reality of the loss. And the reality is currently renewed with every day's news events. I am not normally given to depression, but I do feel sad and worry about the fact this may be the last presidential administration of my lifetime, and I feel sad about that. And the fifth stage is acceptance, becoming okay with the situation, yatada, yatada, yatada. And as you use, we say, there's no way we are going to accept this. We believe in truth. We believe in the rule of law. We believe in love. So now, please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our opening hymn, Spirit of Life.
As we enter this time of offering, as usual, we do it with some levity. A minister was introducing his sermon. He said, "The sermon that I'm going to preach today is about honesty." The congregation perked up and nodded. Good topic. "Before I begin," said the minister, "I'd like to ask you to raise your hand if you've read Matthew chapter 29, verse 15. More than half the people raised their hands. "That's unfortunate," said the minister, "since there are only 28 chapters in the book of Matthew." This morning's offering will now be given and received. As a community of human hands and human hearts, we come together here as we struggle with life's sorrows and celebrate life's joys. If you have something to share, please raise a hand and someone will bring you a microphone. If you are new here, please feel free to raise a hand and introduce yourself.
I'm John Spitzer. I have a couple of joys. Last couple of weeks I was in St. George, Utah at the Huntsman Senior Games, and I know Sal played many years in the Huntsman Senior Games in softball. I was playing volleyball. My two joys are, first, I didn't get hurt. Second one, we won.
You were right, John.
Any other joys and sorrows to share?
Last week, I stood up and talked a little bit about the No Kings rally and the toilet episode that we encountered there. But I forgot to say what I really wanted to say. We sold our house, and we are staying for a year. We signed a lease for an apartment, and we are in the midst of not only chaos in the outer world, but our house is in chaos. Moving is no fun.
May the love of this community hold all who need love and concern. May the light of our community shine on the broken places of the world. May those who are grieving be comforted, and those who are tired find rest. May the broken places be healed. May those who are filled with joy and laughter be abundant.
Our first reading this morning is from Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr. We are prone to let our mental life become invaded by legions of half-truths, prejudices, and propaganda. At this point, I often wonder whether or not education is fulfilling its purpose. A great majority of the so-called educated people do not think logically and scientifically. Even the press, the classroom, the platform, and the pulpit in many instances do not give us an objective and unbiased truth. To save man from the morass of propaganda, in my opinion, is one of the chief aims of education. Education must enable one to sift and weigh evidence, to discern the true from the false. As we enter the period of meditation, this is a story that's kind of personal to me, but one Sunday at the Sarasota UU several years ago, a member and longstanding was our speaker, and he told this very personal story, and it meant a lot to me. He had courted and married his wife over 50 years before, and he said that he and his wife had vowed they would never let the sun set down on an argument. But in spite of that vow, the sun did just that. They argued at night, and they argued in the morning. And I think I left out a very important part, so let me just step back. Every day when he came home from work, he brought his wife a rose, and she liked that. And in spite of the vow, the sun did set on an argument. And they argued at night and they argued in the morning. And after one such argument, he was so sure he was right that during the day he polished his argument so that she would have to see that he was right. And on the way home, thinking about the fine points of his argument, he walked right past the flower shop. But he had an epiphany, and he retraced his steps. And he went back and bought a rose. And he continued his commute home, still putting the finishing touches on his argument. He walked in the door, forgetting he was carrying the flower. He was thinking about being right. He wanted to be right. When his wife saw the flower, she smiled and ran into his arms. And he was so sure he wanted to be right. But at this point, holding his wife, he realized that what he really wanted was this, her love. So as we head into this moment of centering and self-reflection, please join me and take a moment and think about, in the time we have left, what is important and what is it we really want. Thank you, Julia. That was lovely. Our second reading is by historian, philosopher Hannah Arendt. And I'm not sure I'm saying that right, but that's Arendt. What makes it possible for a totalitarian or any other dictatorship to rule is that people are not informed. How can you have an opinion if you are not informed? If everybody always lies to you, the consequence is not that you believe the lies, but rather that nobody believes anything any longer. This is because lies, by their very nature, have to be changed, and a lying government has to constantly rewrite its own history. On the receiving end, you get not only one lie, a lie which you can go on for the rest of your days, but you get a great number of lies, depending on how the political wind blows. And the people that no longer can believe anything cannot make up its mind. It is deprived not only of its capacity to act, but also of the capacity to think and to judge. And with such a people, you can do what you please. So please join me now, rise in body or spirit, to sing hymn number 295, Sing Out Praises for the Journey. If I haven't confused the media booth, can we go back to the first slide of, it says I cannot tell a lie? All right. Well, that is my first lie. I am perfectly capable of telling a lie. So today's subject is honesty. I really love the joke that Janet told, and it fits right in. And there was a time I could have probably talked 20 minutes from 2 bullets on a 3x5 card, but today I have my laptop, which means, of course, I can talk for an hour at least. You know, I used to have such a good memory, but, you know, I always expected to get older. I just thought it would take longer. For the last several months, while watching the news, I generally find myself asking, doesn't anybody tell the truth anymore? And so when I was asked to speak here, this came to my mind, and I thought I'd like to speak about the truth. And I went to my minister, our minister, and I said, this is what I want to talk about. And he said, Bill, the truth is a big subject. He said, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the truth philosophically? Are you talking about just generally telling the truth? And he said, it might be easier to talk about the virtues of honesty or the pitfalls of telling lies. So I chose to talk about honesty. And it turns out that can be a big subject as well. So today, when a tragic event happens, you will notice that the first thing that happened is that two parties start pointing the finger at each other and blaming each other. And then you start waiting to see how the responsible party will spin the story. And the word spin means that you can give the impression that the truth is whatever you want it to be. A daughter of a good friend recently lost her job in New York City, and she was making in excess of $200,000 a year. And through no fault of her own, her company was overextended. But her spin is that she wasn't fired, she was unhired. Now, her bosses, the founders of the company, were terminated by the investors, and I'm pretty sure they feel like they were fired. And then there's the issue of truth in advertising, and if we can have the first picture, please. I took this photograph myself outside of a McDonald's in Bergen, Norway. And then there's the second truth in advertising. That's pretty honest. Movies have provided a multitude of notable one-liners, and of course the first one I remember is Clark Gable's "Frankly, Scarlett, I don't give a damn." And then there was Clint Eastwood, "Go ahead, make my day." And in 1992 there was a blockbuster movie, A Few Good Men, and I remember the cast of that movie. It was Tom Cruise, Demi Moore, Kevin Bacon, and of course Jack Nicholson. And I vaguely remember the plot of the movie. But I do remember Jack Nicholson's one-liner, "You can't handle the truth." Today, this must be required watching for all politicians who apparently agree with Jack. During the recent campaign, recent now being last fall, it was an everyday event to hear sound bites from candidates delivering speeches, and then they were followed by fact checkers setting the record straight. Now, I do not know this with certainty, but I am reasonably comfortable that candidates for political office know that if you say something once, it will be believed, and if you say something a lot of times, it's going to be believed a lot. If you say it over and over, people will believe it. It's a sad situation. Closer to home, while attending a management conference now several years ago, One of the mandatory sessions in my company was to be trained in how to be interviewed. If there was a question we didn't want to answer, we were told to rephrase the question, to spin the question to one we were comfortable answering. So if you were asked a question that you were uncomfortable with, your response would be, if what you mean by that question is, and then you would go on and make a statement about something you're comfortable to talk about, and that was the way you put the spin on the truth. Now, most of us haven't been tested on that kind of a level. I believe in telling the truth, but not always. And I remember a story, and this doesn't shed a good light on my mother, who was a good person, but I can remember as a kid, she would see some lady in the neighborhood and say, "Oh, that dress looks lovely on you." And the woman would walk away and said, "How atrocious that was." And it really gave me, I did not start complimenting people until I was well into my 30s, because I thought complimenting people was a false accusation. One of the most rewarding things I have ever done was to volunteer as a reading tutor for several years at Emma E. Booker Elementary School in Sarasota. I don't know how many of you know this, but that's where President Bush was on the day on 9/11. That's where he was in the classroom when they came in to tell him that the World Trade Center had been hit by a plane. And this is Jeremiah. I tutored Jeremiah for 3 years. I loved this kid. And he would get up in my face, and he would inspect me very closely, like this far away. And one day he said, "Mr. Bill, why isn't your hair black like mine?" So I'm stumped. I'm trying to think of a scientific explanation. And he says, "It's probably because you're old." So, thinking I was clever, I said, "How old do you think I am?" And he said, 99. There's another first grader I had, Pharrell. If I can have the next picture, please. And I'm sitting in the media center one day with Pharrell, and there's a portrait of Martin Luther King Jr. there. He says, "Mr. Bill, my dad says white people don't like him." And I took a moment and I thought about that, and I said, "Well, your dad's right. Many white people don't like him." I said, "But many white people like and admire him. But your dad is right. People don't like him, and I think that's because they know he tells the truth." And that seemed to satisfy Pharrell. Pharrell also did this to me one day. We're reading, and he's rubbing the underside of my arm. And he says, "Mr. Bill, that's really soft." And he used the same line as Jeremiah, "That's because you're old." Several years ago, we had a wonderful minister in Sarasota named Roger Fritz. He gave a sermon on the subject of lying. And he cited a study in which college students were asked to log the number of white lies they told in a day. And on average, these students told 2 white lies a day. And he concluded that it's generally not a good idea to lie, but he posed that perhaps white lies are appropriate, maybe 2 a day, if it's meant to spare embarrassment or maintain family harmony. Now, there was a time when I spoke my mind and I let the cards fall where they may. And I probably burned some bridges, and I'm probably still capable of that. And I always still regret the fallout. But I do believe that honesty is generally the best course. But maybe a little white lie might seem like the kinder course at times. A woman recently wrote into an advice column in the paper with a very touching story. She had lost her young son, and she was grieving. And she got support from her family and some of her friends. But many of her friends ignored the fact and never mentioned the fact that her son had been around. And it was like they had forgotten him. And she was offended. And she wanted her son to be remembered because he had existed and she had loved him and he was an important part of her life. Now, she recognized that these friends were probably embarrassed or tentative about bringing up a sensitive subject. But acknowledgement of her son's existence was extremely important to her. She said that if a friend had a thought about her son, she wanted to hear it because it helped keep him alive. She wanted to keep his memory alive. And I understand her point. And I've been in the shoes of her friends who didn't know how or when to express your sorrow. And several years ago, I had a colleague, his name was Dave, and Dave had lost his son in a car accident. And at that time, my son was exactly the same age. So I would get sick thinking about the fact that could have been my son. So the next time I was with Dave and had a chance, I said, Dave, I'm sorry to hear about your son. I can't imagine how you must feel. And he thanked me for bringing it up, and he said it helped him to talk about it. And he told me that he told me about his son in the accident, and it was very bad. His son had been speeding, lost control, hit a tree, was pinned in the car and burned to death. Now, he also said his wife could not talk about it. So it would be a matter of choice, but it was okay to bring it up with him and not with his wife. I had been reluctant, though, to express my sorrow, and I remember being glad that I had. Now, I will seem like an ogre in this next story, but I had a large staff for many years. An employee came to me one day wondering why he had been overlooked for advancement. And this was not the first time we'd had this conversation. So when he came into my office, my inclination was to pacify him, tell him to be patient, that his time would come. And I remember a very awkward silence in my office. And I said, eventually, we have a lot of really capable people, and I don't see you ever being promoted in this company. Yeah, ogre, right? So, and he was angry, and he was hurt, and he left my office. And he came in to see me a couple of weeks later to resign, of course. But he said, I want to thank you for being honest with me. He said, you could have told me to be patient, and my time would come. But my answer forced him to consider his opportunities. He went out and found a job of increased responsibility with another company, and I have always considered that a good outcome. And one last personal story. The company I worked for years ago was right-sizing, and we let 600 employees go on one Black Friday in July. And I knew that a friend of mine had not made the cut. And his name was Bob, and Bob and I had been hired there had been a movement to hire a lot of people, and we were one of 8 hired in the Cleveland office. And we were all trainees, we all worked together, we socialized together, we helped each other move on weekends, we did everything together. So when I felt really bad when Bob got cut, I didn't know what to do, and by this point I was in a different city, but I called him one day, and his wife, Betty, answered the phone, and she said, oh, I'm so glad you called. Bob hasn't come out of the bedroom in 3 days. But Bob came to the phone, and I don't remember my exact words. I said something like, Bob, I'm sorry, you're my friend, I care about you. If there's anything I can do, let me know. So Bob found another job. He had a successful career. And many years later, Bob and his family were driving through Missouri, where I lived at the time. And that his family spent an evening with us. And everybody was getting ready to go to bed. And Bob said, "Can you and I have a nightcap?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "You know, Bill, I will never forget you." He went on to say that I was the only one of the colleagues, his colleagues, that had reached out to him. Now, I know them all. They're all good people. And I know they all were embarrassed for Bob and felt bad for him. But they just felt awkward and did not know how to approach the issue. Bob passed away this year, but I'm forever glad that I reached out to him. But I got a note here to drink water.
Don't forget.
Now, these have all been personal, soft stories, but I think I want to up the ante a little. Today, our government seems to do as it pleases, with little regard for law, tradition. The White House comes to mind, or even the Constitution. In his novel, 1984, George Orwell wrote, "Who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past." And Jason Stanley, in a book on how fascism works, outlines the essential tactics of simplifying and distorting the truth. He shows how authoritarian regimes, past and present, begin by reshaping our collective memory. And he says, by presenting a mythic past and demonizing those who question it, they rally people around nostalgia, nationalism, and fear. And this sort of sounds familiar. Today, there is a concerted effort not just to influence how we interpret history, but actually to erase it entirely. Books are banned, curricula are stripped, educators are silenced, and at the heart of it is fear. Fear that a more honest accounting of history may challenge the dominant narrative of a straight, white, patriarchal culture. In Florida and throughout the U.S., many states have enacted laws prohibiting the teaching of systemic racism, gender identity, or the lived experiences of LGBTQ plus people. They do this under the guise of protecting children, but these laws are in fact protecting the status quo. They deny BIPOC, LGBTQ plus people, and other marginalized young people access to their heritage. And this breaks my heart. More than that, they deny all children the opportunity to learn about people who are different and who have different experiences and different cultures. And it isn't just about distant history. Since the current administration has taken power, thousands of public web pages, mostly related to BIPOC and LGBTQ and women's issues, have been deleted. Some of these have been restored through public pressure, and we need to keep that up. But the trend remains the systematic obscuring of history and of information that can benefit people. This is a political crisis, but I think more than that, it is a spiritual crisis. It's a crisis of moral memory because it tells certain people, you don't matter. Your story doesn't belong here. Excuse me. When libraries are defunded and school boards restrict curriculum, the goal is not simply to reduce exposure to controversial topics, it is to limit the very tools of critical thought. In just the last few months, the Smithsonian has altered display of impeached presidents so that it does not include all who were impeached. It's a rewrite of history. And then the president fired the labor statistics chief because the numbers were not what he wanted. He didn't fire her for manipulating the numbers. He fired her so he could hire someone who will manipulate the numbers. And then today, there's the term gerrymandering. Gerrymandering first appeared in the Boston Gazette in 1812, so it's been around for a long time. And it's become the accepted practice every 10 years following the census to redistrict. But today there's a gerrymandering war as Republicans gerrymander to gain seats and the Democrats respond to hold their own. But it's an atrocity. It thumbs its nose that equal representation. It's a perfect balance in any district is impossible. But with today's technical and computer capability, we could move much closer to fair representation. So, to me, gerrymandering is dishonest. So ask yourselves, who owns the microphone? Who gets to speak? What is being erased? More importantly, who is being erased? Not just from the past, but from the present conversation. What can we do? We can keep up the good fight, make good trouble, make it locally with local representatives, go to local school board meetings or town hall meetings, go in groups of 5 or 10, participate in No King's Day. Ask these people what they are afraid of and tell them honesty is the best course of action. Finally, there is honesty involved in letting your family know that you care about them. I grew up not expressing my love to my parents. I don't know why, but I didn't. And one night, I was on the phone with my dad, and as we said our goodbyes, I said, "I love you, Dad." So next day, my mother called, and she said that when Dad got off the phone, he had tears in his eyes. She asked him what was wrong, and he told her that I had said I loved him. So today I tell my family all the time, I'm sure you do too, my extended family and longtime friends that I love them, and I remember a line from another sermon, "Let no heart be burdened by things left unsaid." And I think of that every day. My young second grade friends, Jeremiah and Pharrell, had no problem with honesty. I'm guessing that their ability to be so blatantly honest will fade as they grow older, and that's a shame. It seems to me that given the events of the recent political campaign, we need some tough honesty. We need real dialogue. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, some deep listening. And at some point, well, just everybody needs to be honest. Not everybody likes everybody else. It seems to me that everybody could benefit from the belief in our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It seems to me you can't practice that principle without listening. Honesty is a big issue, and we need all the help we can get. So thank you. And now I invite you to join with me in singing our closing hymn, which I don't have to.
Number 295.
Hymn 295, thank you. No? Number 6? Yes. And so, since you bothered to wake up today, be happy on purpose. Go outside, stretch, read a book, call a friend, write in a journal, drink some water, eat good food, breathe, learn something new, express gratitude, chase the sun, create magic, and tell the truth most of the time. Thank you all.